Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Vernon Masongsong is a bilingual metabolic health coach practitioner and the founder of Transparent Health and Fitness. He specializes in a holistic ketogenic lifestyle approach for optimal health and remission of type 2 diabetes. Vernon realized that his diet, which consisted of processed foods and daily alcohol consumption, was damaging to his health. Even though he exercised regularly, his insulin resistance worsened, causing chronic inflammation and fat storage around his waistline. Then he discovered the animal based low carb lifestyle, which promised to heal chronic inflammation and reset insulin sensitivity. Despite his initial reservations, he decided to try it, and it worked. He regained his energy and achieved washboard abs, something he thought was impossible. Inspired to help others, he enrolled in the Nutrition Advisor course at Professor Timothy Noakes Nutrition Network, the #1 school for low carb education, and then became an accredited metabolic health practitioner. Vernon's mission is to spread the message of metabolic health and low carbohydrate living. He wants to coach people and lead the fight against chronic disease and obesity. No matter where he ends up, he is determined to do it, with washboard abs and energy to spare. Vernon Masongsong, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you for having me. Great to be
It's
here.
it's such an honor. I got to meet you in San Diego about a month ago. I think you're the only friend I've ever met actually in a bathroom. We were like standing in the bathroom and both like kind of washing up, and we passed each other 17 times during the conference. And you initiated the conversation. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, but I'm so appreciated that you were able to stop me there, and we were able to chat a little bit and got to know you. And yeah, consider you one of my good friends now.
Well, I thank you. Same to you, man. Basically, that whole conference is a big old family. So,
It really
you
is.
know,
It really is. It's so wonderful to be around all of these people that have found very similar things in the low carbohydrate space and are so lit up by it that they want to share, they want to be there. And just if you did not hear one single word of what was said in that conference, I believe you could sit in the conference center and just feel the energy of the people around you, and you would be jazzed for sure.
I know you gotta love it, right? Everybody there's not snacking it up all day on chips. You just see a bunch of coffee and water everywhere.
Yep.
we're
Totally.
just we're just soaking up knowledge.
Yep. I've made this point several times. I'm sure our listeners are sick of hearing me say this, but like it's 3 p.m., right? We're in the middle of this really technical, presentations, all these amazing speakers going into details with so many of the latest like research on low carbohydrate diets, and everybody's awake. Like nobody is nodding off. Nobody it looks like they're tired or need snacks. They're just like everybody's good. It's amazing.
Yeah, gotta love the power of the ketones, baby.
So awesome. I love it. Speaking of washboard abs, I certainly believe it. You had your shirt on during the conference, so I couldn't confirm it all the way. The pictures on your website are crazy. I would have never assumed that you were overweight a day in your life. The transformation that you experienced is unbelievable, dude.
Yeah, thank you. It's really a matter of putting it all together, finding the correct ratio of everything, but it turns out that, when you cut out all the crap, you give your chance of body to heal. It really does. With my battle with alcoholism, you're always searching for like the magic, whatever it is, to be able to still continue your bad habit, and then still look good at the same time. So I was always in that box for many years, and then you get all these fad diets or pills. I've tried them all, you know whatever supplement comes in, thinking that that could be the trick, you know and sadly there is no magic bullet. It's just stay away from all the trash, all the garbage food that's out there. Lead the real human lifestyle that basically, this, like what Saladino says, remember who we are, the remembering. Let's
Yeah.
remember who we were before all this industrial nonsense. We were a different type of human,
Yep.
and we just got to return to that because that kept us healthy for the most part.
Yep. Yeah.
And
No,
that
I go ahead.
no, that's pretty much what I just want to say.
Hmm. Just a second. Um, so I want to get into all of that with you today. I want to talk about the history. I want to talk about some misconceptions that maybe the general population has about this type of thing, and point out exactly like you said, this is not a fad diet. This is our species appropriate diet that we have eaten for hundreds of thousands and millions of years. Before we go there, I want to hear a little bit more about your personal story. It sounds like you were very active, even from a younger age. And I
Mm.
wanted to ask you about that. And I also want to ask you, as far as the alcoholism goes, what do you think was the main kind of cause or trigger for that?
With the alcoholism, uh, it would be it would started as a sleep aid. I worked at casinos, and I became a night worker, or a graveyard shift, whatever you want to call it. So when I'd get home, it's like 5, 6 a.m. and I want to have a nightcap, and that's how I would end my evenings. So it became a sleep aid, and then over time, just like any other drug, it gets worse, and before you know, it's instead of just every night, then it's on my days off, and becomes a compounding thing, and alcoholism takes control of you, and then you start. After learning all the stuff I learned, addiction, it doesn't matter what drug it is, right? It stops giving you those pleasure hits like it used to. You need more and more, and it gradually grows, and you lose control, and then you start looking for excuses of how you can keep it going and stay healthy, and your mind plays tricks on you, and you don't even see yourself clearly because of the foggy brain. So it's just a gradual buildup, and I could say I was a functional alcoholic, and I paid my bills, and probably like most people, you know, but to be optimally healthy, which that's the irony, is that you asked me about my athleticism. I started lifting weights like in middle school, and I never stopped. Um, cardio is never my biggest thing, but I always lifted weights. Um, Throughout high school, basically my whole life since then, consistently. And I started to do a hell of a lot more cardio when at that time, I didn't know it's insulin resistance, that what was going on. Why am I just fell into that. Oh, I'm getting older. My metabolism is slowing down. My genetics, because you see your father and your family, they're in that, they're starting, they have all those proportions, they got diabetes, and it's like, okay, maybe that's my destiny. So then I started doing more cardio, thinking that whole calories out nonsense, and energy expenditure. But you can't run or exercise your way out of ultra processed food or sugar. You can't do it. It's impossible because of the hormone signaling. But I didn't know that. Nobody knows that. They just think eat, move more, eat less. That's what they tell us, you know, and it doesn't work. After years so I never stopped exercising. The only thing was I kept drinking more, and I just ate processed foods. And my belly just kept expanding. My love handles kept expanding. And that's really the sign. I did a LinkedIn post recently that the carb belly, that's a sign of insulin resistance. So if you guys are walking around with a belly that's pushed out, but your arms are skinny, your legs are skinny, that's a huge sign of insulin resistance, and you should really go get yourself checked out and check your fasting insulin, because they don't check fasting insulin. They only check for blood sugar. And if your blood sugar's in check, they say you're okay. See you later,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
And then they think that they're okay. They're sent home thinking they're fine. My cholesterol is fine. But yet the insulin resistance is steadily growing and growing and growing. And before you know it, the sugars are out of control. And then you're already a full-blown diabetic. And now here's your medication to keep you stable for the rest of your life. And that's the battle that we're in, is to stop that from happening, prevent that from happening, have us take control over our health instead of diagnose and treat these symptoms that all start from what we're putting in our mouth.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
it's as
No,
simple as that.
yeah, I totally agree. I had a client go into the doctor to talk about a procedure he might have done here pretty soon, and the woman nurse practitioner, whoever she was like, "Oh, you should lose weight." He didn't take offense to it. He just said like, "Okay, okay, what would you like me to do? What would you suggest on how to do that?" She's like, "Well, you can exercise." And he's like, "I lift weights like 4 days a week. I play golf every single day. Like, that's your answer is exercise. That's all they know." So it's crazy. I do want to take a quick aside here from your personal story, which we're going to get back to. But you said something very interesting, and I don't want to miss it. The carbohydrate belly that you mentioned. This is so pervasive. I think we think it's normal when really it's just the average. Most people have this. Why do you call it carb belly and not fat belly? And why is it so dangerous to have, in particular, fat accumulation around the midsection?
So I call it carb belly because that's how it's created. You know, you can start it from, our evolutionary biology, survival. When the carbs were in the trees, we ate the heck out of them to store food in our bellies for when the food was scarce. So it's a natural thing, and our brain wants to keep eating it for survival. But in our modern society, where carbs are aplenty and the worst carbs you can buy, and we can eat them all day, every day, well, then that creates the carb belly, because that's what people are doing. They're snacking it up all day. And then that triggers the insulin response, which is the fat storage hormone. And you're basically just telling your body to keep storing fat. Store, 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 store. If you keep, that's the part with the insulin. If you keep signaling that, you keep telling your body to store or to grow. So your body is forced into storing all this sugar into your fat cells, creating that nice carb belly that, we're all thinking is normal now. And it's really like, it's because if you look around, everybody has that or is close to that or has something of that nature. So when you see everybody's in the same boat, you believe to think that's normal yourself, that it's just genetic or my age or my metabolic system is slowing down. No, it's really just as simple as I eat sugar all the time, and that's what my body is forced to do with the sugar, is store it as fat. Whereas if you get the sugar out of your diet and you eat only fat and protein, you use the fat as energy, and that storage trigger, which is the insulin, that doesn't get triggered or very little like it's supposed to be. I like to say you're going to be in an insulin dominant state of being or a glucagon dominant. That's the other hormone. So it's like a yin and a yang. You either stimulate one or you're riding on the other. And you want to be more on that glucagon side of things, because glucagon allows you to use the fat as fuel, and it triggers autophagy, which that is the true detox of there, with all these city fad, juice cleanses and detox this and that, that's all a myth. You're just having diarrhea and probably losing muscle or something due to poor nutrients. But the only way to really get into your body's regeneration is through autophagy, which, guess what, is triggered by glucagon. So you want to be on that side of the fence to lead a sustainable, optimal way of life. because that keeps the inflammation away, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. For whatever detox program you see being sold on Instagram, like it's cool to think that your own innate system is the best possible detox you could ever need. You don't need, enemas every 2 days. You don't need powders and supplements to quote unquote detox. You just need to allow your body to be in the correct state of motion. For the listener, glucagon, I love talking about it, and I like to remember it as glucose gone. So it's a hormone that, like you said, like it helps you use up that energy and get it out of there. And that's particularly important, like we mentioned, for internal fat in the midsection. You're storing fat around your organ tissue. That's not good. That's not a good thing. That's how you develop fatty liver disease, which is hugely on the rise. We're starting to see it more and more in kids even. So yeah, that was really well explained. I appreciate that. And speaking of detox, let's get back to your story and tell us how you were able to turn things around.
Okay, basically it took me hitting my rock bottom. So my rock bottom was my family was away, so I went to town drinking every day, and I got really sick, and I never forget, I poured the rest out of the bottle in the toilet, said I'm never going to do this because I felt so bad. And I never had this before in my life, where I had a withdrawal from something, and I was like physically shaking in bed, and I'm like, what's going on with me? And I just didn't know, my tongue was white. I didn't know the sign of that, what that was. It turns out that means you're severely dehydrated. Um, and then thinking back on it too, I was eating the wrong stuff to get out of that too. I think I was eating like some cereal with grains and oats and stuff, trying to recover. And that obviously is not the right way. But yeah, and then I went to work, and I still didn't feel right. And I started uh shaking. And so I went to the ER, and they hooked me up to an IV, replenished all my fluids, and just said I was severely dehydrated from drinking so much. Um, but I mean, it was just such a scary situation for me, that to me that was my rock bottom, because you're like, man, I don't have control. What's going on with my body? It's shaking and this and that, and that was basically, I guess, my hallelujah moment that kicked me. Oh, you can't keep doing this to yourself. You got a family to support. You got to be the man. You can't let this thing just keep control of you. So yeah, I just cold turkey quit, um and never looked back. So I think it's been like over 4 years. So I just know I got to stay away. I don't have that circuit to do it occasionally or have a couple drinks at a party. Like, my brain circuit goes to, once you start, it goes. So I had to get away. So I kind of, I feel for those people with the sugar addictions, because it's, different drug substance, but it's a narcotic too, and it's hard to stop. And when you stop, you get withdrawal. You want more, or you can't put it away. So, I can really empathize with the addiction circuits in the mind, that, it's not totally our fault, because we're so hooked on these substances. And yeah, that's what saw me through. And I listened to a podcast or a documentary, and saw the paleo way, and then I got into that, and that like jumpstart my weight loss. So I lost about 60 pounds on the paleo.
Wow.
um and then uh yeah, I did the paleo, and then I did the carnivore, uh from seeing it with Saladino, reading in his book. And then that's what really, that was the code, the way, you know, that's what got me the abs, because that took me to the next level.
Wow.
The carnivore way of life, but I went more with meat and cheese. I eat meat and cheese, meat and dairy. That's basically it. So that's my combo that my body reacts the best to. We all have our ratios of, who eats more protein to fat, but for all intensive purposes, that's what our gut is made to process, is protein and fat. Not all this ultra processed garbage that they want us to believe is food and then keep us sick and addicted from birth to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
It, it is, like people, the conspiracy theorists, it's like, they keep pushing back that social security age, up and up. And it's almost looking like they farm us from birth to death. And then we work our whole lives into our social security, but we're dying before we can receive it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But they've extracted the most amount of money out of us, from pharmaceuticals to the food system. You can see it plain as day. But it's hard to wake up the population if they don't get the message.
Yep. Yeah, the systems that be to need to continue, they need to have customers and they need to keep people alive. And they're very good at that. The medical establishment is really good. Pharmaceuticals are really good about keeping people sick for a very, very long time. And it really is a shame. Okay, so you mentioned the carnivore diet. How long would you, from what you remember, did it take you to be like, you've heard about it for the first time, to being like, okay, I've accepted this, I'm going to try this? Was that a long process for you or relatively short?
It was a short process because I was already doing paleo, and paleo is, whole foods, nuts, vegetables, real food. So the paleo way is really good. But there is carb intake in there, and I was having more carbs than I should have. And then when you go carnivore, there's no carbs. And when I first started, I was pretty strict with, steak and salt and water. So I really got rid of all the carbs, which, like we were talking about earlier, allowed access to my fat stores, because I'm on, you said glucose gone, right?
Glucose gone.
I haven't heard that one, but that's a good one.
Yeah.
So glucose gone, so no sugar, and it got rid of, everything that was there. It got me to my most leanest shape I've ever been in my whole life. And that is because the carbs were gone, which stimulate that fat storage response. So, I just later on, after I lost all that and got super lean, then I started experimenting, adding some cheese back. And then, Saladino went with the fruit and the honey. So I tried that too, but that did not work for me because, I guess I'm extremely sensitive to storing fat, and you work your whole life, you wanted to see those abs, and then you see them start going away. You're like, okay, I guess honey's not working for me. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think we both have a very deep respect for Dr. Saladino, but his
yes,
book was deeply influential in my understanding of the diet. It's about 6 inches away from my head right now. I've kept the book. I think it's a wonderful reference. I think it's a bit overcomplicated for most people out there, but to increase your understanding of the topic, I think it's a wonderful book. I always feel like, as much as I want to build bridges, I always have to put some kind of disclaimer when people are
yes,
kind of searching him and they're seeing a bit of a conflicting message. It wasn't even that long ago. I saw him on a video on social media, and he's pointing out all the different cups of fruit juice that he's drinking in a day and explaining the benefits of all this fruit juice. And I can't get on board. And I have seen people get re-addicted to carbohydrates because they followed what he said, and then he changed and started adding hundreds of grams of carbohydrates into his diet, from what I understand. If that's still true or not, I'm not sure. But and they get re-addicted and they can't get out of it again. So Your opinion again, such a deep respect for him and what he does, but I also feel like the message to the general public, it's not great.
Yeah, agreed. I love the guy. I learned so much, like you said, from his book, and then continuous, his podcast's amazing. He gets people from both sides. He's not a dogmatic person, which we need. We need to unite everyone, vegans, yeah, because we just don't get along on the fact of eating animals, but other than that, we agree on almost everything. We don't want that processed way of life. So yeah, I totally agree with him on most things, but on this one, it works for him. But as you said, I would love for him to have a disclaimer that says, like, if you are metabolically unhealthy, overweight, you know, this isn't, the best thing for you, or maybe you shouldn't try this, because you're insulin resistant. So this is, going to make things worse. But you run into that, like you said, have a bridge. He gets the message out. It's great. But you see him in his washboard abs looking great, drinking juice and honey. It's like the Liver King dude with, oh, I don't do steroids. This is from eating testicles, and people like, oh, I can do that too. And you can get just as obese. You can get fatty liver disease by eating honey and fruit, because once again, it's sugar. So your brain flips that switch, and if you lose control, I mean, a little more of my background. I come from, I was brought up as a Mormon, actually.
Me
Um,
too.
oh,
Funny.
really?
Yeah, it's funny. Me too.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a lot of family there in Utah and Salt Lake in the area, you
That's where I
know,
am.
I actually had this conversation because, I'm not practicing anymore, but what I do remember from growing up in it is, what is their drug of choice? Sugar. They do
Sugar.
all
Oh yeah.
these they do all these bake-offs and cakes and this and that, and it's like welcomed, and actually they promote it, and I get it, to keep the family unit, and that's great. But I mean, you look around the churches and there's some pretty big people in there, and last time I checked, they're not drinking alcohol. They're just eating sugar and fruit, and they're getting just as big on that stuff, and they lead a more natural, wholesome lifestyle than their general population.
That's right.
And so that's the message, like you said, like promoting it is such like a healthy thing, but yet if you eat too much of abundance of it, your body can't handle all that sugar.
Yeah.
It just can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in a suburb of the Salt Lake Valley, and the number of soda stores you see popping up all the time, it's crazy. And these are sodas that are very big, and they're pumped with extra flavorings, and they're usually sold with sugar cookies, and it's like clockwork. It's always in the early afternoon, like 3 p.m. Line around the building. It's crazy, wraps around with cars, because you have to imagine that whatever people had for lunch, they're going to be crashing right around 2 p.m., 3 p.m. And so you just see so many people going to those pick me ups, and yeah, it's not great. It's not great around here. And I remember, me growing up in this area, and we'd always have a dessert. Now it would more normally be something homemade that my mom made. You wouldn't get a lot of it. You'd only get a little bit of it after dinner. But as the years went on, you started to see that red vines were sneaking in, and fruit snacks were always in stock, and like all these other processed desserts became more and more pervasive inside the home. And so yeah, it's tough culturally when that's the case, to kind of break out of that. So that's a cool observation. Yeah, I didn't know that about you. That's very cool. um I do want to ask you about some of the misconceptions that we hear around meat. Like you're doing carnivore, you have been more strict, you've been a little bit less strict. um are you not nervous that you are going to end up with a different chronic disease. You're going to have a heart attack from consuming saturated fat. You're going to get cancer because we saw that headline a few years ago that definitely said that processed meat and red meat in particular was carcinogenic, that it causes cancer. All of that stuff we hear all the time. Are you not concerned about your own personal health? You got the abs, but what if you die of a heart attack?
Okay, so I, like everyone else, you know, I would call it social programming. They program us, the fat is bad, cholesterol is bad, salt, too much salt is bad. Everything that we're programmed with, from school and on. And we all grew up through that low fat 80s craze, and everything low fat. And that really changed the culture of the whole population. We listened to those people. So yes, in the beginning, it's like you program your whole life to believe a certain way. It's similar now that we're talking about a religious thing. It's like religion in a way. You think, oh, you're the same way, and then you have a large group of people that think the same as you. So when you go off on a limb on your own, it takes a little bit of courage. And I thankfully took that step, which everybody should break out of, the dogmatic echo chambers. Think for yourself, question everything. Science is made to be questioned. Don't believe every study that comes out. Look at the details. Look who did it. Look what kind of study it was. And that's the biggest part of it. All these studies are epidemiology studies, and they're not controlled trials, so they can't prove anything. There's no causation to it. They just throw out questionnaires, and there's healthy user bias and unhealthy user bias. So there's all these parameters that these studies don't account for. They're not controlled trials, so we cannot trust them. And especially when they're being paid by whoever is out there trying to push their biased agenda. So, in this day and age where they're pushing plant-based and, climate change and this and that, the enemy is the animals and the meat and the carbon dioxide, and yeah, it just, I had to question everything. I took what I thought was a risk, but I just went with it. But even then, I every 4 months I got my blood work done, and then I got, that's the only thing my doctor's good for, is he orders everything that I request, for the most part. He doesn't agree with my lifestyle, of course, or because my LDL is high, I have to refuse those statins. But everything else is perfect. That's the amazing thing, is this way of life got me in my most optimal health. I even asked this question to my doctor. Everything there is perfect except for one thing. LDL is above the normal range. But yet he still has to say, I refuse to statins because that's the protocol, because they have to abide by the protocols, which are controlled by the powers that be for whatever reason. Here's the tinfoil hat stuff again, but it doesn't make any sense. The logic isn't there.
Yeah.
And I have all the blood work for the past 3 years now to prove my journey, because if something was wrong, it would be in the blood, and it's not there. It's only gotten better as time has gone on. So,
Yeah.
that's how you take a leap. You have that blood work in the background to back up, and you can monitor what your body's actually doing. And in my case, it healed me to the best I've ever been. So that's why this launched my mission into learning more and becoming a metabolic health practitioner. And now I want to help heal the world, get the message out that this is who we are as humans. We're meant to be in a ketogenic lifestyle. That's our physiology.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's to amaze me. Things actually get you change the diet to a more carnivorous diet, like everything fixes itself. It's not just the one thing. It's not just heart health, brain health, or your mood, or your ability to deal with stress, anxiety, that kind of thing. Like everything seems to get better across the board. And I was recently re-listening to the Sacred Cow book by Diana Rogers and Rob Wolf, and they were talking particular about.
He's back. All right.
It's all good. All good. I'll just pick up where I left off and I'll make that edit later.
Okay.
So I'm rereading the book Sacred Cow by Diana Rogers and Rob Wolf, and they talk about that study in particular about cancer. And you realize just how bad it is on so many levels. Like the data they collected was based on food frequency questionnaires. So how many times in this last year did you eat an apple? Doesn't say what kind of apple, how big it was, doesn't make a distinction between canned apples or bottled apples. They're terrible. They're really bad. So it's hard to collect the data. The sample size isn't that big. The results at the end were not that good. It was like an 18 or 17% increase in cancer, which sounds like a lot, but where epidemiology was really good for us was smoking. And it was like a 300 or 3,000, I can't remember what the p-value was, but it was a far greater likelihood that you would end up with lung cancer if you smoke, not just this minuscule amount. And you look at all of that, and it's so bad. Yet that's not what people are trained to do. They're not trained to look at studies. They don't know how to dig through the data. They just see headline cancer cause, or red meat causes cancer. It sucks. Too bad.
Yeah, it does suck because you just read that headline. It seems like every year I see a headline about keto being dangerous or something. Somehow that gets posted on a national newspaper somewhere, and there's no science to back it up, zero. But yet it's there, and they got some there's some garbage study that's paid for by somebody. It's really, a travesty, but that's why we're here, me and you, right? We're trying to yell, scream these things as loud as possible to everybody, because I truly, when we educate, that's another thing. We should educate the population, not always go to medicate. Because now that I read all these studies, they're always searching for, how they can make a pill or an injection for one little mechanism that they might have found something in it. So instead of just, that's how we heal people, right? We heal the root cause of everything, which is the sugar and the processed food, but they look for symptoms to treat to make money. And so they're I guess at war with us because when we heal the world, we don't really need them too much anymore.
Yeah.
So that's the real battle behind the scenes. So I truly believe if we educate the population, nobody likes to be made a fool of, that they believe this their whole lives. They believe the doctors, and everything basically becomes an enablement of their addiction because they're told that it's genetics or you need these pills to keep your blood sugar stable, keep eating carbs because carbs are good for you. It's essential. Like they're still being told these things. Stay away from fat, and when fat is life, it's our savior. And when people realize these things and they experience, like with my clients, when they finally experience the change and so, like me, I think it's like most of us don't want to have that carb belly. Most of us don't want to feel bad. We want to be athletic and energetic for as long as possible. I'd hope to believe most people are like that. But, once they get that change, then they never want to go back because, yeah, I finally found it. It's here. They like to try to tell me, oh, keto's not the magic diet. I'm like, it must seem that way because of all the benefits, but at the end of the day, it's not magic. It's just human physiology.
Yeah.
It's the way our body's meant to run optimally, you
Yeah.
know? So we must get this to everyone because we need more optimal human beings, not people slaved to the system and being farmed from life to death. Because if we got all these intelligent humans, man, the sky is the limit for us. We could do anything if we're all motivated with and united together instead of divided, and in our own camps. I have, there's a lot of pessimism in the world going on now because of the climate, but Dr. Pete Ballardstedt, the last year's conference, he inspired me. He's like, if you have the whole world and we're all in it together, imagine what we could do together.
Yeah.
We could do anything. There's no limit. The humans have survived for millions of years. We're survivors. So there's a way out of this thing. It's just, can we beat the other side on that side of it? Which side is going to win out? It's kind of exciting in a way, and I'm glad I'm on my side screaming as loud as possible.
We are too, brother. I love it. I love it. That's amazing. Dr. Ballerstedt is such a wonderful human being. And you mentioned intelligent people. And dude, even just today, I'm listening to two of the smartest people that I know of. Each of them is a host of two of the very top health and nutrition podcasts, not nutrition, health podcasts that you can find. 99% of the audience probably know who these two people are. And they're dissecting a study about metformin, whether metformin should be used in type 2 diabetes, what's the effectiveness. And they're talking all these numbers and subgroups and factions and insulin resistance, explain it perfectly, and then discuss the data from these tests. And they're not really like, it's not that big of a difference that I'm hearing. And like, it still always just goes back to, this is energy balance. Exercise is the very best thing that you can do. People are taking in too much energy. And even the guest, again, everybody would know this guy. Even the guest was like, well, what about ketogenic diets? He listed off a number of different things that might help and interventions that people can do without taking a drug. And a ketogenic diet was one of them. And it's basically just kind of like ignored. Like, there was no real answer from the host about it. And it's a little bit frustrating. Like, why are we in the weeds discussing metformin with limited seeming results when you just described insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes? Get rid of the carbohydrates. Don't have carbohydrates. They are now poison to you. Get them out. Can it not be that simple? People get confused. It sucks.
Yeah, it really does. It's like, I tell everybody that, it's diabetes is just the highest level of insulin resistance. It really is just levels of insulin resistance. And, the more carbs you eat and you keep triggering that insulin, your body's not meant to be in that insulin dominant state all the time. It's
That's right.
there, but like everything else, you can abuse that function. And if you abuse it over years, then those receptors cease to function like they used to. And then that sugar gets everywhere.
Yeah.
Sugar is the toxic narcotic. That's the other message, is that, people in these packaged foods think it's food. Fast food is food. I thought that myself, but you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why we're here, to let everybody know that, that is the cause of your sickness. And like you said, they talk, metformin's been around since before we were born, and it's the most safe, widely used. But does it keep you from getting worse? No, because what do? They keep, if the one pill doesn't work, then you take two, and then you take it twice a day, and then that stops working. Then you got to go to the insulin shots for the rest of your life, and it makes me sick with this, the American Diabetes Association, and they put their menu has a lot of sugary substances, and their goal, believe it or not, for diabetics is less than 7. So their goal is to keep you diabetic. Less than 7 is diabetic. Your insulin resistance, where are we? What planet are we on?
Crazy.
Our goal is to stay sick now. So they're going the other way. They're lowering the standards, for humans, making them even worse, when making new goals that keep you sick. You begin to start to wonder, man, what powers it be? What's at play here? We're sitting here yelling, hey man, we got the answer, stop eating the sugar, and we're being ignored, because it goes back to that addiction side. You don't want to listen because you want to keep your addictive substance going. And we got a battle on our hands, because when you got your doctor telling you, eat more or eat less, move more, eat plant-based, eat carbs, and then you got the ADA saying your goal is less than 7 and you're in the 6s, you're tricking yourself, feeling good about yourself. Oh, I need to be less than 7 and I'm in the 6s. No, you're still sick, man.
Yep.
You're still 100%. Sick, and you're not going to get any better. You're only going to get worse. And you lower the bar. It's like in the school system, they want to lower the bar. It seems like they're lowering the bar on humanity. And we got to wake up somehow. We got to get out of this somehow.
Yep.
That's the other side of the fence, right? We either get out of this and we unite and become such a intelligent, helpful society, or we become, like that cartoon Wall-E, where we're in those chairs on that ship sipping on soda, and we're just moving our fingers.
Yep.
Our joysticks, sedentary individuals. Sadly, there's a lot of those humans on this planet right now.
That's right. That's right.
But they don't have to be. That's the thing. We don't have to be, as long as we remember who we are, before all this madness.
That's right. Now, if you go to any store, any Costco, there's just more and more people on scooters than there was last week and the week before and the week before. All the handicap spaces are pretty much always like taken. It's crazy. So on that note, what makes you optimistic for the future?
What makes me optimistic is me and you talking here. We still have liberty and freedom to discuss these things right now. That's my hope, as long as we keep that freedom to speak, the sky's the limit, because I think my hope is, how the podcasts people are naturally progressed to the podcast because they're getting real, honest information, and they're not being gaslighted on the major news networks to believe a certain biased thing, brought to you by Pfizer and Moderna and all that, and advertising medications. People are naturally moving over to this way of absorbing information. So as long as this side keeps growing, I think it's a matter of time, because we got politics people on both sides getting together now. Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, these major voices are getting millions of people ears and they're getting this type of information. So as long as we keep talking, telling our stories, and we can change one family member, that one family member, like myself, can, how I help heal a lot of my family members. We can change the cultures of our families and then pass that knowledge on, just like old times. you know we can create that change in our immediate families and then have that passed down as legacy. And then I think sooner or later, hopefully that steamrolls. That's my hope and my
Yeah.
optimism.
I love that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think once we get enough of that groundswell, we can see some change. So I love that answer. I love your energy. And I love that you took time to be on our show with us today, Vernon. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
My website is transparenthealthfitness.com. My email is vernon at transparenthealthfitness.com. Just, shoot me a line, hit me up. No obligation. I'm happy to help. Questions, I'm here for everyone.
That's amazing. We will be sure to link that in the show notes. And I would really encourage the listener, obviously, if you're not driving, to go to the website and look at the photos. It really is striking to see, when you throw out a number like I lost 60 pounds initially on paleo or whatever, like that sounds nice, but to visually see it, it's quite powerful. Again, meeting you in person, I would have assumed that you've never been a pound overweight in your entire life. And so it's amazing to see that transformation. I think that can be a real source of inspiration for people. So I hope they go to your site. Vernon, thank you again so very much for all the work that you do. Let's keep shouting this to the population, anybody who will hear this. Let's see if we can make some change. And again, thank you so much for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for allowing me to be here to spread the message, man. Truly appreciate it. Thanks, Case.
It's such an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.